you know. So like it's literally my fantasy world. So without photography, without anything, I actually start assembling my ideas and put this together. And if you have some skills in color and drawing and proportions and composition, you can make this kind of stuff up, you know. So it literally is something made up. Now, if I actually say the headwaters of the Sacramento River with Black Butte in the background, very few people except Lynn would probably question me, yeah. Because they don't know, right?
Right.
They wouldn't know. How would they know? And chances are somebody who would be visiting, you know, driving through buying the painting who lives in Florida, they totally want to believe that this is real. You know, so it's literally Walt Disney meets, you know, whatever. So.
And it's truly that beautiful evening light with the turquoise sky and the red. It's just beautiful.
Yeah. So there's just some really beautiful effects that are happening in here. We have a beautiful effect of the light in the distance. And the way that I started this off was pure color right out of the tube because I really wanted it saturated. So this is absolutely pure yellow that I started off with. And then I followed the rainbow, basically. It's like pure yellow, then I used pure alizarin crimson, and then pure blue. So literally when you saw the beginning thing, I did a rainbow, yellow, red, blue, okay? And then all of the colors in between, because what I did was I blended all those colors in between, and I got all of these colors. Of course, it was so saturated at the time that it looked really, really fake. But I had to go up that high to keep the painting from being chalky. Okay, so what you're seeing is a really highly saturated start for the painting, and it's red, yellow, and blue. Now, what's interesting, if you know anything about color, is that yellow is predominantly the warm color, right? It's the complementary color to yellow is purple, and if you look closely in the front here, it's purple. So literally, we're looking at a color wheel. So you're looking at yellow with the complementary color, and then all of the colors in between. So it literally is going down through the color wheel to the purple colors that are in there. So all of these colors in here are all the purple tones, and they were all laid in almost like a target, you know, like yellow, red, blue. Before I even that was just there before I even started putting in the mountains and the canyons and all of that stuff. And then in the process, I would add some white to the yellows and push them back and the reds, and I would adjust those colors. But I needed to go all the way to pure color to get it saturated, because this painting literally is a very highly saturated painting. And because of that, if this were in a gallery, it would rock. Because it would glow in the dark, because literally nobody could keep their eyes off of it. Yeah. And it's strange because even when it was sitting in my kitchen where I critique all of my paintings, I had a hard time glancing through my kitchen without having this thing it just pulls you back in because of the saturation of color. But it just shows you that you can take a painting practically up to pure color and still create the effects of really being real. And if you look at it for just a minute or two, although when you first get the look of it, you're like, wow, that's a little bit more than, but when the longer you look at it, the more real it becomes. And it's kind of like sometimes when you look up and all of a sudden you see these magnificent sunsets. You go, oh, that's so unreal. But the more you look at it, the more you kind of accept it, you know. So anyway, so this is Black Butte. This is my imagination of Box Canyon, and then all of the detail. And you can look at the detail as I go in. So anyway, any questions about it?
Did you make up the blue one that you have in the gallery?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
I could feel that in those two
That's
pictures.
the same kind of stuff.
Yeah, I felt that.
Yeah. I always have this kind of difficult thing between fantasy and reality, you know, and even my real paintings are somewhat fantastic. You know, they're almost like the painting that's in the window.
Yeah,
okay?
that's beautiful.
I like taking it almost to because if I really had to look at the way I process things. I live in a little bit of a fairyland. You know, it's just, and I think that's what kind of pulled me up here, is because to me, there's enough people taking pictures out there that we don't need renditions of what's already out there. I'd like to kind of reach out and get a little bit further than real, you know, almost a little fantastic. Any questions about that?
This is so beautiful.
Cool. Anyway, let's switch this quick. This is
I have a question. So when you began the painting, you blocked those colors in, all the darks, all the,
Yeah,
and then you put in the details and.
and the details came in last. So literally, I just worked with abstract. So it was like an abstract idea, abstract colors, and then just kept on mushing it together until I got all of the values correct and stuff. But even the values are a little bit more fantastic than being real. But I think it's an interesting effect, and it does kind of. And then one thing too is that I have very thick paint in the area of the light, and as it slowly goes off to the dark, it gets a little bit more thin and transparent. So you can actually see the darks in here a lot more transparent. I'll leave this painting up so you can kind of take a closer look at it.
And if you squint, you could almost tell that you're looking into the sunlight and it could blind you. Because it gets more powerful when you squint
Yeah,
at the picture.
yeah. And my thing was how do you actually recreate light in a painting?
Yeah.
You know, where I wanted people to actually walk by and feel like they had to squint, like
Yeah,
literally.
That's
You know, like, because our reaction when we look into the sun is that we squint, right? So how do you cause a viewer to actually false squint, like feel like they have to like squint at it for a second, and then open up their eyes? Huh?
Do my glasses turn?
Yeah, I know. Well, the reality is, and the disappointing thing with paint is that it's not light. But we can actually recreate the effect of light through color. And what really gives us the feeling of light in this painting is how I use color, not how I use light. So it's literally because our brains, when we see that kind of menu of darks, reds, yellows, you know, that going through the rainbow, it causes us to feel like we need to squint. And if you get that effect when you look at it, then I've accomplished what I was after. Because
That's so different because they've always taught us to paint from the top to the bottom and dark to light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the things that I always tell people is don't believe everything I say.
I don't know, so I'm not gonna, I need all those lessons.
Yeah. Well, the thing about painting is that there is no formula all the time.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you're learning from teachers, the students almost feel like that's what they want. It's like, where's the rule book? And teach me the proper way. It's kind of like if you go to a cooking class, you want to know, well, you got to start off with a chicken soup, right? You know, if you're going to make something. And then you add things to it. And first you add this, and then you add that. And we're used to seeing instructions. When we go to school, we see things instruction. So when I go into a classroom, students are like, well, how do I do this? And I go, well, just do it. Well, what's the right way? Well, the reality, a lot of teachers will say, well, let me show you how, right? That gives them value. That gives the teacher value. And the student feels like they're being led, right? Mm-hmm. The only issue with that is that he's not really telling you the truth. Mm-hmm. Because there's 50 ways to do a painting. Now, they want to look good, so they'll show you a way, and you'll follow. And like you said, teachers always tell us that. And if you have that formula in your head, when somebody says, don't think that way, think about this, you go, well, that's contrary to what that other teacher says. And that other teacher was correct, but that was just one path. And once you realize that eventually, if you ever want to establish your technique, your originality, whatever you have to find your own path to get from A to Z. And if you notice when I teach, I'm not always sitting there going, do it my way. I'll go, well, start here. And if you go in and do something else, I don't say, oh, you know, you shouldn't have done that. It's kind of like, okay, if you're going to do that, this is how that's going to work. You know, and you can start with the sky, you can start with the front. You know, you can start with a sketch, you know, you can start with colors, you can start with lights, you can start with darks. But when you hear a teacher saying, this is what you need to do and that's what you need to do, you're just learning his way of doing it. Doesn't mean that's always necessarily the correct way, because if everybody followed the exact same thing, everybody would be painting the same way, right? So you'll have to find your own path. Some students like working from dark to light, but other students like working in medium colors and then add darks and lights. Some students like working from the lights, like a watercolor, and slowly go dark. Which way is correct? All of them. It's however you feel you can do it. Okay. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And I have 3 different ways that I've read about, or I've met people and they do it differently.
Yeah, and you're thinking, what's the right way?
I don't know about right or anything like that, but I like your concept of illumination. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very pleasing thing to look at a painting and immediately be taken in with the light.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's very, very beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying the other people don't do beautiful paintings too, they
Mhm.
do, but I like yours.
Well, my thing isn't that, and you know, one of the things that, in the last blog we were talking about luminism. And luminism is actually a term that was developed to, by historians looking back at what artists were doing in America in the late 1800s. And so the people who were painting in the 1800s didn't call themselves Illuminists. But there was this branch of the Hudson River Scholars where this is what they concentrated on. They wanted to create the effect of light within the frame. And looking back, there was enough of them together that literally they formed what they would call the Luminist School. And the Luminist School is actually really one of the true American schools. You know, we have American Impressionism with Rodder, but literally Luminism is actually something that was created here without them even knowing that they were creating a movement within themselves. And it's not one that's really even highlighted in art history. In fact, Chris did some research and she found very little on it. I mean, in fact, if you put luminism into the computer, your computer tells you it's misspelled.
Oh,
Yeah, that's true.
There's not even a word luminism. And so then what I do is I classify myself as a romantic luminist. Okay, because my paintings not only